Look, I know every Disney movie is a big deal, but Moana is not just a big deal. It is Disney's most streamed movie of all time, which makes the sequel for Moana an even bigger event. That sequel just came out. Can Moana 2 deliver? Look, the group chat is here. Let's go. I'm Elamin Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. If you want to know how ready people are for a Moana sequel, consider this. The original film has been watched 748 million times in the past 5 years. In 2023 alone, it was the most streamed movie in all of streaming. That is wild if you think about this, a movie that came out in 2016. So yes, there is appetite. There is hunger for another visit, another check-in with Moana, another check-in with a young girl from the Pacific Islands just trying to find her place in the world.
You were gone forever.
Before Maui stole Tifiti's heart, our ancestors wanted to connect our island to all the people of the entire ocean. It's my job as a wayfinder to finish what they started.
Moana wants to finish what they started, but look, speaking of finishing what they started, Moana 2 did not start out as a movie. That was not the plan. Disney had intended this thing to be a bunch of episodes that come to streaming. But then they switched gears because they realized that audiences not only wanted more Moana, they wanted more Moana on the big screen. However, it gives me no pleasure to report that so far the reviews, they are not great. That is fine, though, because there's a bunch of people who are ready to talk about it. The group chat is here. Jason P. Frank is here. Amil Niazi is here. Riley Yesno is here. Welcome back to the show, all of you. How's it going?
Good.
Great. I'm delighted. We have a lot to talk about. Riley, I'm going to start with you. Listen, before we even get into the sequel, maybe you want to talk about your relationship with Moana. Let's talk to me about teenage Riley watching this movie. You're in Thunder Bay, Ontario. What's your vibe with Moana?
Yeah. I was, I think, 16 or 17 when the original Moana came out. And I, since that time have grown to have maybe a more critical analysis of film. But
Sure.
At the time, I was so in love with Moana. I know she's not technically a Disney princess. They make reference to this in the film, but to me, she was the Disney princess. And I felt it was a nice bend after, Disney. I think that was around the time where they had really solidified that they were going to make their female leads no longer the whole plot line be around men. They were going to have a more robust sort of drive. And then
it was also Brave and then Frozen and then Moana, sort of in that same kind of conversation. Yeah.
100%. And also this island that is a spirit island and whatever. I'm, again, from Thunder Bay, we have the sleeping giant that was in my backyard. I was this is everything. And so it also gives me no pleasure to report that after seeing Moana 2, teenage Riley is going to live there with the original Moana instead of this one, I think.
Okay, so at the gate, the sequel did not measure up to the original, how much you love the original to you. That's what we're gathering here.
Yeah. I keep on trying to decide if I've pre-colored my expectations by reading other people's reviews before I went there and knowing that it was supposed to be multiple episodes, but it did feel kind of choppy and rushed. And I can imagine that if they had, again, multiple hours over multiple episodes to kind of really dig into some of that, I'd care about the new characters more. Maybe I would have gotten more joy out of the music, but it didn't give me that same feel as the first one. Definitely.
Jason, you're very generously taking time out of American Thanksgiving to join us here. In Canada, we just call it a Friday. But also you took your niece and nephews to see Moana 2. Let's talk about the verdict. How did it land for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my opinion really matters here.
Matters to me, Jason.
But the niece and nephew matter way more, right? They are the target audience.
Yes,
right?
That's true. That's fair.
My niece is 11.
Yeah.
And she said immediately when I asked her how it was, she went, "It's good. It's not better than the first one." And I went, okay, I think you would have said anything with Moana in it was good, at least.
Yeah,
So this is kind of low bar. And my nephew, who is in kindergarten, he definitely said he liked it. I don't think he really cared that much
Okay.
yet.
Does not have the
But
same
he
kind of
was,
relationship with Moana.
yeah. I would not say that. He likes watching movies on streaming because he can go like run around the house as opposed to movie theaters.
Much
So
like
that's
myself.
where we're at with that. Ella did really like the song "Get Lost." That was her favorite song. I think otherwise, I asked if she could sing any of the songs after we left the movie theater, and she said no.
Oh no, I mean, like the thing
Yeah,
about the first Moana is that like I walk around
yeah.
still now regularly singing the songs from Moana. I'm just getting coffee singing the opening song from this movie. Like I had such high expectations. I think like that's the thing, Emil, is that we're dealing with really high expectations from a first movie that was such a beloved hit. Such a beloved hit that people like kind of, it's just stayed with people. But then you look at this movie and you look at like the numbers that Disney's expecting from this first weekend and you think, does it even matter? Does it even matter that people are not as excited about the sequel? Like, does it functionally matter at all?
Well, people are excited about the sequel. You mean, does it matter if it's good or not?
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't matter because it's not for Jason. It's not for Riley. It's not for Elamin. It's for my 4 and 7-year-old who have been watching the trailer for it every day for like months and months and months.
Yeah.
We were at the beach in the summer and my daughter was like doing her Moana skills in the waves. Like kids are excited for it. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to exist because they've seen the movie, as you mentioned, with the stats. So many times they desperately need something new to continue this story just for themselves because they're like, I know that story. I need a new story, but they want the universe to continue. So no, it does not matter if it's good.
Okay, well, we've established that you guys are a little bit more lukewarm about this movie than the first one. And we also established that our opinion here is not the one that matters because all the parents will still be taking their kids to this thing. I gotta say, Jason, from a creative point of view, I have to sort of defend the idea of it being good mattering a little bit, right? And so I have to defend the idea and at least the notion of Disney making a thing for the big screen, which is not the thing that they did here. Like they greenlit a series that's supposed to go to Disney Plus, but then you know what, they were like, you know what, let's now pivot and give people something on the big screen. When they switch gears here, how much is riding on this for Disney and its model going forward, do you think, this whole idea?
A lot is riding on this. Last year in this time slot, you may remember the movie Wish, or you may
I do
not remember the movie
I
Wish.
actively choose not to remember the movie Wish. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a movie that few saw and fewer liked. And that was the Disney movie that came out in the Thanksgiving time slot last year. So they did not make money over Thanksgiving, which is normally their like cash cow of a time period.
That's like Frozen 2 debuts of Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
the big ones come out around this time. Yeah.
So when that happened, they freaked out quite clearly and said, oh, okay, we already have something in the chamber with Moana. They announced that this movie was coming out in February of this year. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It just became a movie a few months ago.
Yeah, it literally is. It's barely a movie because it wasn't intended to be, and it wasn't intended to be for a really long time. For animated movies in development, like that's just such a short period of time to cobble together a full movie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think it matters that it's good because you need kids to rewatch this movie. That's how Moana 1 became such a big hit and is resulting in the returns on Moana 2. Moana 1 did well enough in theaters, but nowhere near the level of Frozen. Yeah. Now, this movie is going to be bigger than Frozen 2. Right. Yeah. So that's how, because streaming is such a success. But I don't know, because the songs are unfortunately bad, if kids are going to rewatch this one as much. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think that the lack of good stuff in this movie is going to potentially affect its rewatchability. The songs were not written by Lin-Manuel Miranda this time. Yeah. They were written by a team that has not written live musicals previously. Their names are Baron Barlow. It's not at the level that Lin was writing at, and that was a big part of the success of the first one.
Well, we should say, like, Lin-Manuel Miranda written many musicals, has won all the awards there is to win for winning music for writing musicals. Then when he goes to write a Disney movie, it becomes a moment. It becomes sort of a significant deal that Lin-Manuel Miranda is sort of entering the Disney universe. And like people can sing every song from the first Moana. The idea,
and people can sing every song from Encanto.
That's right.
Which is his other Disney movie.
Exactly right.
Not the case here. Not the case here.
Yeah, it turns out you can't just call Lin-Manuel Miranda with 8 months to go and say, Lin, can you make an entire musical for us in this short sort of time period? Amil, I know that like Moana 2 has got you thinking about the future and how much Moana might actually be on screens in your house as your kids actually do grow up. Talk to me a little bit about that. What are you thinking there?
Well, it's funny because my kids at this point are so spoiled, right? They can watch whatever they want, whenever they want. And not only that, but they're very used to living in a world where the thing that they love does belong to a universe, does have multiple movies within its catalog. And that's certainly not something that I ever experienced. It was like, oh, you love Aladdin? Well, good for you. Now just watch Aladdin a million times. Good luck getting your parents to buy that on VHS. That's my personal story.
Yes.
But my kids, they're being raised like expecting, Sonic, there's already 3 Sonic movies ready to go. And they love those movies. And they're like, Mom, when's the next Sonic? And it's like, wow, you're so greedy. And I was thinking about something that Ben Affleck recently said. God, I love him so much. He's so smart and he doesn't get credit for that.
I agree.
But he was talking about, the ramifications of AI realistically. And one of the things that he said was maybe it won't, be able to create, excellent movies. But what it could do potentially is like you're sitting at home and you're like, make me up an episode of Succession where, Stewie and Kendall run off together.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, similarly with AI, when my kids are itching in their pants to like get a new sequel of something that they love, of course, AI is where that fits in because it doesn't matter if it's that good, right? They're just like, I want more Moana. I want more Frozen. Frozen 2 to me wasn't even that good. It had some great songs, but you can see that these sequels don't necessarily need to live up to the bar that the first one sets. It just has to exist. And so I was thinking a lot about, and this is not a conversation we've been having too much, is how AI fits into kids programming.
Riley, I want to get to you in just a moment, but Amil mentioned a Ben Affleck clip, and I keep that thing on me at all times. So let's hear Ben Affleck talking about how AI might change cinema.
AI can write you excellent imitative verse that sounds Elizabethan. It cannot write you Shakespeare. What AI is going to do is going to disintermediate the more laborious, less creative, and more costly aspects of filmmaking that will allow costs to be brought down, that will lower the barrier to entry.
I just don't think of Ben Affleck as someone who uses the word disintermediate regularly in regular conversation. And you now have to sort of reconsider, how you think about this man. God, I love Ben Affleck. Okay, Riley, I want to talk about a larger theme here with Disney and its progression in terms of its representation of Indigenous characters, because it has had let's say, a spotty history. Is that a gentle way to put it? But also, like, Moana was a big deal in many ways, right? Because it stars Oli'i Carvalho from Hawaii and also Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's part Samoan. And then you get the critiques of the original Moana, because a lot of people said, it actually kind of flattens the cultures that it's trying to represent in a lot of different ways. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I also want to talk about the arc in general of Disney representing Indigenous characters, because it feels like, as far as I can tell, they're making more efforts, and it feels like kind of more critical to assess those efforts as they go on. What's your assessment as we've arrived at this point in this Disney relationship with Indigenous characters? Because I feel like they've gotten better at asking questions. I'm not sure they've gotten better at answering them, but I feel like that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, the Pacific Island specific critiques of it, I think I can see definitely how they're spot on, super valid for their larger Indigenous storytelling sort of arcs. Like, one of the things that always frustrated me about Disney is that for the longest time, the narratives that they reserved for their Black and brown characters were always tradition versus authenticity.
Yeah.
That they were like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be, the chief's daughter anymore. I want to go off with this white man, and that's me, Dad, was kind of like what their narrative was. And what made Moana, I think, impactful to me at the start, was because she actually like finds her power in that movie through the tradition of her people, through listening to her elders and her grandmother, and like that's her authenticity. And it was like, for that purpose, I think a really empowering thing for me. And I do wish, though, that they had obviously done, especially leading up to Moana 2, better community engagement with this, because from what I've heard, like they've done that also previously. Like I know a lot of folks, I'm sure this isn't a unanimous opinion, but that with Frozen 2, that a lot of Sami folks were like very pleased with like
with the representation.
All of the details.
Yeah,
totally. So there's a precedent there, and there's obviously a model that they've done before. But if Pacific Islanders are like, well, you didn't do it here, then what the heck, Disney, you know?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Sami people relationship to Frozen 2, because like that was an example of Disney doing it well, which tells us that like there's someone inside Disney saying, if we're going to do this, if we're going to go in this direction, let's figure out how to do it responsibly. And I think like I obviously you can't speak directly to how Moana 2 does this. We are going to talk a little bit more about that next week. We're going to have one of those critics, Gala Kelly, will be on the show. So we'll spend a little bit more time grappling about this. But in the meantime, speaking of authenticity and imitation, we got to move on to another topic. My name is Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud, and this show is called Commotion. And we are going to talk about celebrity lookalike contests. Take a listen to this.
How does it feel to be Sin's finest full mascot?
I'm being called the most eligible bachelor in London. I'm not sure it's anything I ever envisioned or dreamed of.
How does it feel to be the best, Timothy?
Really overwhelming.
Have you been hearing this a lot with the popularity of the bear? People saying that you look like the star.
Yes, I get it all the time. Yeah, people are always pointing out how similar we look.
You're like, and I keep walking around in an apron? I don't know.
Those are three of the men who have won the celebrity lookalike contest lately. They've won celebrity lookalike contests of Paul Mescal and Timothée Chalamet and Jeremy Allen White. And Jason, what is going on? Why are we seeing celebrity lookalike contests just basically everywhere right now?
I mean, I think it's all about, there's like a casualness on the internet these days that people really are all of a sudden taking into the real world, right? Like we are getting these aren't Elvis impersonators. These aren't Dolly Parton impersonators.
They're just a guy.
Yeah, these are just some guy. Like the goal, like even the winners, you're not the person. You didn't fly here because you look like Timothée Chalamet. You are a guy in New York who kind of gets told you look like Timothée Chalamet, right? Like that's who this is for. This is not for the like most lookalike. The people who look the most like someone. This is for the people who like have a sort of vibe. Yeah. Which I think is great. There's a casualness to it. There's something fun about the fact that it's local. Right. Yeah. Like it's like not
neighborhood focused
impressive.
Sometimes, you know?
Yeah. If you put in too much work, like that's embarrassing a little bit for these. Like that's why I think you see so many memes about people wanting to use it as like a dating technique, right? Yeah. Like you want to go there and check out who's there that you can hook up with, because these guys are pretty accessible. They just showed up that day. They saw it on a sign as they were walking through Williamsburg, and then they showed up. And I think that there's something kind of very 2024 about that, taking the classic like high level, really intense field of celebrity looking alike, and then making it into the most casual version that you possibly can.
Riley, I take seriously the idea that these are kind of like casual, which makes them feel very authentic, very grassroots-ish. You know, like I saw the Glenn Powell lookalike contest, and his mom was one of the judges, and I was like, no, trying too hard. No need to call Glenn Powell's mom. Please don't do that. Like,
and
that
that's
makes it
Glenn
weird.
Powell. That's Glenn Powell overall.
That's it.
For what it's worth.
Exactly correct. But Riley, can I just ask you, like, what do you think? What void is being filled when we go? You know, the thing that is nourishing us right now is lookalike contests.
Yeah, I mean, it says something about the times, doesn't it? Yeah. I agree with Jason that this is something that I think that could also only happen in this year, in this moment of time. Like, this is very different than, you know, we've had impersonators before, but this is something, more about, I think, like a community laugh, a community meetup. And that's a very nice thing. And we do this all the time where we're talking about these celebrities anyways. We're analyzing their looks all the time, but it's usually just reserved for either tabloids or comment sections. And so finding ways to give people access to actual face-to-face conversation about the things that they're already talking about. It makes sense to me that this sort of emerged. However, I would be remiss to point out that I think this is only really possible for men because, it's the white boy of the month every month. They all kind of look the same to me. And also I saw somebody posting about how they wanted to do like a Zendaya lookalike contest and that they were like, that is nothing more than a public humiliation ritual. Like you cannot
The
go out
vibe
and do
will be
that.
different there. Yes.
Absolutely. And if you remember Love is Blind and that whole like drama about that woman that was like, I look like Megan Fox, and that she just got eaten alive.
Yeah,
on
the internet came
by
for
people
her.
being like,
It was like a really like
100%.
mean sort of outpour of. It was a very.
And she
cruel-
looks like Megan
and
Fox.
she does look
for
like
what
Megan
it's- I
Fox. Like that's a
see
real
it.
thing. 100%. Amil, but just before you head out to the Ben Affleck lookalike contest, which I know you have right after this, what's your read on all this? Like, what's your read on why these things travel around the internet so much?
No, I have no idea why they do. It makes no sense to me at all. Like, the only thing I really think is like, there's no way this could happen for women. I think maybe the bar for masculinity right now is just so low that this is like how they're filling in intimacy. Like this is their replacement for intimacy. It's like, well, we could all just be in a space and we could just like be together and commune together, and it could be about our looks as opposed to like desperately needing to talk about the male loneliness epidemic. So I just have to think it has to do with that, because I cannot wrap my head around why this is a thing. When I was a kid, you had to learn to sing and dance. You had to buy a wig. You had to at least have some sequins on your outfit to even qualify as a celebrity lookalike. So
You couldn't just carry a haircut and say, well, we have the same haircut. Well, let's do. You know, like
exactly.
It's just,
come on.
just not good enough. Okay, listen, before we all go, I just want to wrap on some recommendations, some things I should be maybe spending the weekend with. I mean, I'm going to start with you because probably the biggest thing in your universe at the moment is the end of the original cast of Vanderpump Rules as we know it. Why do you recommend that we get invested and care about this?
Well, I think it's the biggest thing probably in a lot of people's universes. I mean, Scandival, the scandal with Sandoval, broke the internet. It broke the New York Times. You know,
That's a Tom
elderly
Sandoval
people
story
had
from
to be
last year.
told.
Yeah. Elderly
the
people had to be
cheating
told
scandal.
what people
They had
were
to be
talking
told
about.
what Vanderpump Rules is.
Sure.
They had to be, they had to learn what Sexy Unique restaurant is. Like, it was a big deal. And that cast has been, led out to pasture, and I think rightly so. But it's a big deal. These people were a big part of, sort of creating the sort of current iteration of reality star. And I'm sad that, I've kind of like, I can't say I grew up with them, but I certainly have spent a very large chunk of my life with them. And so I really, I beg you to spend a little bit of time with Vanderpump Rules, the OG cast. Now we'll have to refer to them as over the weekend.
That's right, because the times they are changing. Riley, 30 seconds to you. What do you want to recommend?
Yeah, so I want to recommend a show I'm rewatching right now that doesn't get enough love, if any love at all. It is on Prime. It's called Deadlock, and it's like a short, limited series. Without spoiling it, it is like a dark drama comedy. Gives me a bit of like Taika Waititi's stuff vibes, and it's about a small town in Tasmania that has an extremely high lesbian population, and the very few men in the town start to get murdered, and they're trying to figure that out. So
That's a beautifully enticing sentence. You're like, they start to get murdered. Who's doing the murdering? Jason P. Frank, take us home, pal. 30 seconds to you.
Okay. So I'm in America. It's Thanksgiving, very wholesome time, spending it with a lot of family. I need something to go against that. I need the maximum edge that I can bring in at the end of this weekend. And luckily for me, Criterion Channel right now has a channel for John Waters. They have a whole John Waters collection.
Yes.
That is new to the channel, and so I'm recommending that. If your weekend got too wholesome, you can cut through it, add a little friction to your life with the John Waters collection.
I welcome the friction. I welcome these recommendations. You guys are the best. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks again. Thank you. Jason P. Frank writes for Vulture. Amil Niazi is a writer for The Cut. And Riley Yesno is an Anishinaabe writer and researcher. That is it for the show today. My name is Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Guess what? We're going to be back next week. I'd love to see you then. If you're around, let's do it.